President Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, is here to assess the shakeup on the national security team, and we'll test the limits of the auto pen work of Joe Biden with the Heritage Foundation's Mike Howell. And you won't believe how the FBI fabricated evidence to target orgasm therapy. We've got a V-block and more. It's all next on the Matt Gaetz Show. Let's do this. We're shaking up Washington, D.C. We're breaking the fever.
You ever watch this guy on television? It's like a machine. He's great. Matt Gaetz.
President Trump has shaken up his national security team. Michael Waltz is out as national security advisor and on his way to represent our country as ambassador to the United Nations. The American Conservative magazine has been a beacon for realism in American foreign policy. Their executive director, Kurt Mills, told us last night that the latest moves mean policy changes from the Trump administration.
Waltz was a hawkish outlier within his own ranks, and you're going to see a clear shakeup here. This is a clear philosophical shift at the NSC. I think what you see here is clear, unrestrained nationalism. And I think you see clear desire to get out of extraneous theaters, i.e. the Middle East, but also not necessarily courting direct kinetic war in East Asia with Taiwan. And I think Trump, again, with the Iran talks, is desire to pursue national interest above all else and be pretty blunt and uncompromising on that.
Marco Rubio was the runner-up to be vice president. Now he has 4 jobs: Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, head of USAID, and he's actually the National Archivist as well. In 2005, I used to work for Marco Rubio in Florida. He's a man of doing many things, as many as President Trump will give him. He's hardworking, brilliant, focused, and capable. Undeniably, the world remains precarious after so many foreign policy blunders from the Biden-Harris administration. Russia continues to play cat and mouse with a ceasefire. The ceasefire in Israel has collapsed. We keep striking the Houthis, but nobody really wants to occupy Yemen, where they live. India and Pakistan are in a nuclear standoff over Kashmir, and China is continuing to lick its lips over Taiwan like a pit bull ready to tear into a T-bone. We thought we'd talk to the man who was at the center of President Trump's first national security shakeup, General Michael Flynn. General Flynn was a registered Democrat for most of his life. He grew up in a strongly Democratic family and maintained that affiliation during his military career and tenure as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency under President Obama. Having a front row seat to the failures of the Obama administration and seeing what a disaster Hillary Clinton would be as president, General Flynn did something Democrats never forgive. He switched teams. General Flynn was a prominent campaigner for President Trump's first election and even spoke at his convention.
Crooked Hillary Clinton, leave this race now. If I did a tenth of what she did, I would be in jail today. Wake up, America. You cannot sit this one out. Elect Donald Trump as the next president of the United States of America.
Straight fire. Democrats always saved their most vicious attacks for their own former members. They tried to jail Michael Flynn during the Russia hoax. They tried to brand Tulsi Gabbard a traitor during her confirmation. President Trump, also a former Democrat, was almost killed twice. General Flynn's involvement in the Russia hoax revealed a lot about how the deep state works. Many of the Russia hoax deep state targets were merely means to an end. Like, nobody wanted to ensnare George Papadopoulos because he was a big get. It was all designed to get Trump. Donald Trump Jr., probably the number 2 deep state target, was obviously all about getting to his father as well. General Michael Flynn may have been different. Nixing him early in the administration was an end unto itself for the deep state. Why? Because Flynn understood the intel community from the inside. He had seen the abuses under Obama-Biden. He had grand plans for reorganization and reform. The deep state couldn't afford to have someone as sharp and credentialed as Michael Flynn on offense, so they put him on defense. Flynn would ultimately be indicted. His family was threatened by prosecutors. His standing as a military hero questioned unfairly. President Trump pardoned General Flynn. He is free of any of the lingering nuisance from the Justice Department. He remains one of our nation's brightest minds on matters of foreign policy and intelligence, and he joins us now. Joining us now, former National Security Advisor to President Trump and retired Army Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. General Flynn, what do you make of the recent shakeup on President Trump's national security team?
Yeah, I really think that at this point in time, at the 100-day mark when the president should be talking about all the great accomplishments he's had, to have this kind of a shakeup, Matt, as you well know, that it just doesn't appear to be as though things are in the type of control that the president would like to have right now inside the White House. We've already had a little bit of a shakeup over in the Pentagon with Secretary Hegseth's sort of front office. And now, the National Security Advisor, as I know, and as the country has come to realize, is a very, very important position. And, I know Mike, and then the addition of taking Secretary Rubio, not only as the Secretary of State, but putting him into that role for, even for a short period of time, that the job of the Secretary of State is humongous as it is. And I just think that it just doesn't portend well right now for what the country needs. And then what the country needs to be focusing on are the accomplishments of President Donald J. Trump's first 100 days. That should be the narrative that the White House has out on the table right now, and not this. And obviously, as you well know, Matt, the progressive left media is going to jump all over this. As I've seen in the last couple of days here, they're doing all these comparisons of when I was taken out and all the different things. And I think that Trump was wise to lower the noise level by putting Mike over as the ambassador to the United Nations. So that doesn't leave him out in the cold, I guess. But what we need right now in the country is we need confidence, we need control, we need organization, and we need to move forward. We need to continue to move forward on the president's plan and his agenda, and that's really what I guarantee that's what President Trump wants.
You know very well how important the National Security Advisor is to the national security team. Maybe take my viewers into how a National Security Advisor can really have a major impact on policy questions and operational capability.
Yeah, I think for your audience, Matt, your great audience, every question that gets raised in the White House has a national security angle or impact. Every single one, whether it's a foreign policy issue, whether it's a domestic policy issue, whether it's an education, whether it's on the rising rates of crime, healthcare, every single policy action that the president has to decide on, every executive order, has a national security impact of some magnitude and some order. And so the National Security Advisor position, is also, for the president, acts like a quarterback for the rest of the interagency, and particularly the national security apparatus, which includes, the entirety of the U.S. intel community, clearly the State Department, the Defense Department, our major law enforcement organizations, all of DHS. So that National Security Advisor, because he's with the president on a daily basis, is taking like the coach. The president's the coach, the National Security Advisor is the quarterback. And and that team that I just laid out, those are the players on the field, and it's the National Security Advisor's responsibility to do the coordination and really in some cases provide the leadership that the president needs to have when he can't be directly involved in some of these issues because he's off talking to other presidents and prime ministers and kings around the world.
Axios is reporting the Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller is a leading contender to become the National Security Advisor. He is President Trump's longest serving staffer. I'm sure you've worked in some proximity to him. I'm a big fan of his. What do you think President Trump most needs in a permanent National Security Advisor, and do you think Miller could do the job?
Yeah, Stephen Miller could absolutely do the job. Stephen Miller, I give him the nickname Chainsaw, right? He's so effective. Stephen could actually be the National Security Advisor, no problem, hands down. He's got the loyalty to the president. He's got the absolute trust and confidence of the president. He knows exactly the kinds of issues that the America First, agenda, the president's, MAGA agenda, if you will. So Stephen has the knowledge and the wherewithal, the guts, the courage to be able to do the job.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Stephen Miller is one of the smartest people I have ever met.
Absolutely.
He is loyal to the president. He is fierce. He would be highly effective, and we have his back on this program. Whoever the next national security advisor is, General Flynn, when they jump into this role, how do you see the threat landscape right now around the world? What do you think ought to be at the top of the list?
Yeah, it's one of the most complex that we've had. Clearly, the economic components of what the president is attempting to do with the his sort of economic this economic war that we are involved in, particularly the tariff war, if you will. China at the top of the list, no doubt. The serious situation in Eastern Europe with the war in Ukraine, the Middle East, the actions going on in the Middle East. I mean, it's very, very complex, very dangerous time. I do think that we still, and the president was right to put a pin on the Panama Canal. I think the Panama Canal is vital. We have about 70% of our trade goes through the Panama Canal. So it's very complex, and that's just a part of the framework of the international, sort of landscape. Domestically, we still have the huge challenge of what we've faced over the last 4 years of this illegal immigration into this country, the invasion. And that has to be right at the top of the president's list as well. And I know he's got great people like Tom Homan and Kristi Noem and others that are working that piece of it, as well as some support from the Department of Defense. So, very, very complex times. If the president goes with Stephen Miller, I think one of the things that he's got to consider is that, the strength that Stephen brings to the chief of staff's office, and the policy issues there. I mean, it's a difficult decision for the president, because he gives up a part of what Stephen's doing there, because those are complexities in and of themselves, and they do tie things together. But he needs somebody right now that he can absolutely trust, and I'm a big fan of Stephen. Stephen's got the courage to do it.
I agree with you. It would be terrible to lose the tremendous influence that Stephen Miller has had as Deputy Chief of Staff. I wish he could do like 8 jobs like Marco Rubio. But there was a meme I saw on X, General Flynn, and it had you in a glass box and President Trump with a hammer, like in case of emergency, break glass and get General Flynn back into the administration. You're obviously a hero of our movement. You've seen the dangers of government from the inside. Would you go back to government service if President Trump asked you?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely would. I mean, he and I had met and talked, not recently, but certainly since he took office. And, I mean, it's one of these places where it's got to be the right fit with the right conditions. And I think right now we're in a state of play where there's so much complexity, and I have had my share of it, and I know how things operate. And so if he was to give me a call, I certainly would take the call and see what he has to say.
He's a very persuasive guy, and we all know that you had really aggressive and I think needed plans for reform in the intelligence space when President Trump initially tasked you with the National Security Advisor role. And now that you see Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi really, really grinding away at these evil forces within our government, do you feel any sense of peace after what you and your family went through, that things are actually getting better?
Yeah, I do. I felt a lot of indication when President Trump won the election. I mean, because we worked so hard these last 4 years to get him elected. I think the team that he's got together, is a superb team. I do think that there is massive, massive reform that must occur. What Elon and Doge has discovered and exposed. I mean, it's the levels of corruption, Matt. I mean, it, you've seen it, you've experienced it, you've felt it. And so there is still very, very much so severe reform that's required. The National Security Council, under the National Security Advisor, is one of the first places that I would look. And I think that's something that is one of the issues that Mike Waltz probably may have needed to move faster on. I don't want to get into the speculation, but I think that there is massive reform that's required still. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take courage. It's going to take people who know what they're doing. It's going to take strong leadership. And frankly, it's going to take the confidence of not only the president, but of the American people in the person in the job. And I think that that's what matters right now. And I think that's the challenge that faces the president, to be able to continue to put good people in these tough jobs You know, we need
Yeah.
ambassadors around the world.
Oh,
we need
sure.
a lot of people in jobs right now. So
No
very
question
important.
about it. Well, General Flynn, thank you so much for your service to the country, to our movement, and for coming on the program to share your perspective.
Absolutely, Matt. God bless.